days to go until a US Treasury deadline. Jessica Parker, BBC News in Washington.
Well, let's cross live now to Los Angeles to speak to William Lee, chief economist at the Milken Institute, an independent economic think tank based in the US. And thank you for joining us on BBC News. Just first of all, let's look at the political side of this. President Biden saying neither side got everything it wanted. Is there a political winner here, would you say?
No, there isn't. In fact, it's a false victory for the Republicans in the sense that they did not put the fiscal house in order. The path for the deficit and debt are not on a sustainable trajectory because President Biden did a political move that was epic in proportion in its brilliance, because he boxed the Republicans into only negotiating on 11% of the U.S. budget. The entitlements, which are mandatory spending on the part of the existing legislation, wasn't touched. And that's the major source of the rise in deficits and debt that the Republicans were very concerned about.
And we're seeing Kevin McCarthy as well. He's, of course, overcome some very fierce internal resistance on the way to securing this deal. How do you think he's sitting at the moment?
Well, right now, I think he's showing his own political weaknesses in the sense that he had to rely on the opposition party, the Democrats, to get the necessary votes to pass the legislation. Now, don't get me wrong, that they are emphasizing the fact that this legislation for raising the debt ceiling just had to be passed because the U.S. could not jeopardize its reputation as the foundation of the international financial system to jeopardize the credit worthiness of U.S. treasuries. So it had to be passed. And so you really couldn't let the perfect be getting in the way of the good. So in that sense, he did do the right thing. But it shows the weaknesses of the U.S. political system, and the fact that we have this perennial debt crisis is a source of embarrassment for the United States around the world.
And you speak there of around the world. You've been speaking to international investors. What's their view? How do they perceive the US following this saga?
Well, it's yet another episode where people who hold U.S. treasuries as a store of wealth begin to question whether or not they should be holding U.S. treasuries. Back in 2011, Standard & Poor's said that, well, even though the Obama administration came to an agreement with the Republicans, the Standard & Poor's lowered the U.S. credit rating from AAA to AA because they said the solution doesn't address the main problem, which is that the fiscal house is not in order. The path for the deficit and debt were not on a sustainable trajectory. We're in a similar situation today, but we'll see what Fitch and the other rating agencies do about the U.S. credit rating. Already we see that holders of U.S. treasuries, major holders like Japan and China, have begun to reduce their holdings over the last year by about 15%.
And this deal, I think it is important to say, it hasn't been cleared yet. It hasn't become law. It still needs to pass the Senate. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's almost a guarantee that they will pass the Senate because the opposition there isn't as strong, and the Republicans certainly are not the party that's controlling the Senate. So I think in order to allow President Biden to declare victory, the Senate will clearly pass it in fairly due course.
OK, much appreciated on your thoughts there. William Lee, chief economist at the Milken Institute, joining us.
Thank you.